Good day, boxing fans. Saturday night at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, somebody's O has got to go. It's a battle between two undefeated light heavyweights, a classic Mexico versus Cuba rivalry once again on the go. And I think it's going to be a terrific fight, and the winner will possibly be the logical next opponent for Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol, whoever ends up undisputed in the rematch. So if you're interested in breaking down the fight between David Benavidez and David Morrell, the light heavyweight bout, then stick around. David Benavidez, the former two-time WBC super middleweight champion of the world, is now a fully fledged light heavyweight, and he is 29-0 with 24 of those victories coming by way of a short route, and he's a formidable fighter in his own right. It seems the Canelo Alvarez fight is not going to happen. Light heavyweight is not the best weight for Alvarez. And then you've got to also keep in mind that super middleweight, Benavidez lost his title on the scales, so he could have found himself in an Alvarez fight, but that's not the purpose of this video. It's to see if he's going to retain that undefeated ledger when he faces another undefeated, albeit less experienced fighter at 11 wins, no defeats and 9 knockouts, and that's of course David Morrell. Now, Morrell has held a couple of interim titles at light heavyweight, so has Benavidez, but that's by the way, because we know Artur Beterbiev, undisputed light heavyweight champion, is going to run it back with Dmitry Bivol, and then hopefully after a break for the winner, people are going to ask what's next, and the logical next super fight will be the winner of the fight between these two guys, David Benavidez and David Morrell. Now, Benavidez in his last fight didn't look all that great to me. It showed the good and the bad of Benavidez, and Morrell in his last fight, I think that fight also showed the good and the bad. Now, David Benavidez, we know him as a pressure fighter. He's over 6 foot tall. He'll be the taller guy in the ring, but he will be at a reach disadvantage against the southpaw Morrell. Now, I don't think the southpaw style is going to bother Benavidez at all. It took care of Demetrius Andrade. But David Benavidez is a steady pressure fighter, not a swarming pressure fighter, but a steady pressure fighter. He comes forward. He's got decent defense when you keep him honest, rolls his shoulders, works well with the gloves. And what I really like about David Benavidez is the way he goes to the body. He really digs to the body, and he's explosive. I think at light heavyweight he's not a one and done puncher, but he's got heavy hands. You know, if he lands combinations on you, he might get you out of there. In his last fight against Alexander Vosdik, the former WBC champion, Benavidez started well. He was banging Vosdik around the ring. Vosdik very composed, good feet, good technician, I think. You know, kept his composure, and in the later part of the fight was fighting back and winning some rounds, I think at least, against David Benavidez. And that showed you the bad part of David Benavidez. Benavidez, very solid defensive arsenal, great body puncher, very accurate. Not always too great at cutting off the ring, but, you know, if I look at his body at light heavyweight, looks a little bit on the soft side, and I wonder how dedicated he is in his training. We know there's been some controversy with things outside the ring with Benavidez, but very late against Alexander Vosdik, he started fading. He was breathing hard through his mouth, you know, and Vosdik was starting to outbox him in spots. And then Benavidez comes with those big blows, and, you know, that shades the volume from the other fighter in the hands of the judges. He won quite clearly, but all I'm saying is he faded there towards the end and led Vosdik back into the fight for me. So the stamina, not too great in the last rounds. The last rounds, Benavidez took most of the rounds sort of off, and he just fought in spurts. Now, David Morrell, in his last fight against Radivoje Kalashdzic, he started off well, just like Benavidez against Vosdik. He's also a sort of steady pressure fighter, good jab. What I like about David Morrell, his gloves are up high, but he's dynamic with how he does it. He blocks with his shoulders. He has subtle movements where he bumps the punches off. He doesn't leave his chin out to dry, which is a good thing against David Benavidez. Good jab, and a good defensive arsenal. Nice snappy punches, he's explosive. But when Kalajic you couldn't get him out of there, Kalajic started fighting back. And in the later rounds, I wouldn't say he took off rounds, but he took off parts of a round. And Kalajic was just like Benavidez did with Gvozdyk. He let Kalajic back into the fight, and Kalajic won some rounds and had his good moments. And I thought that David Morrell really struggled when Kalajic was on his toes and moving around. Now, the good news for David Morrell as well as David Benavidez, I think they kind of similar in style, and I think they struggle with the same kind of opponent. You know, lots of lateral movement, the guy that's quick on his feet, guy that's got very good hand speed, is going to give him trouble, like we saw with David Benavidez against Caleb Plant. Plant had also had some very good moments in that I thought was a very hard fight for both men. Now, so that's what we have here. We've got two guys that's defensively sound, not Pernell Whitaker, but who is. And we've got two guys that on the record at least can crack. I think my eyes tell me David Benavidez is a better puncher of the two. Is maybe Morrell is slightly quicker, but Benavidez to me has got more sauce on those blows. You've got to tell me in the comment section below, who do you think is going to win this? Who's going to keep their out? Is it going to be David Benavidez, or is David Morrell going to upset the apple cart? Now, I think for Morrell to beat David Benavidez, he's going to have to get up on his toes, and he's going to have to stick and move a little bit. He's going to have to tee off on David Benavidez, up the ante as the rounds go on. So he can't be like he was against Kalajic. If that's the case, I think he's going to get stopped in that fight. He might get stopped. We don't know how good David Morrell's chin is at that level. Because remember, David Benavidez is definitely the more seasoned fighter, you know. Andre, Gvozdyk, Plant. David Morrell hasn't got those kind of names on his ledger. So we know a bit more what happens under the fire of David Benavidez when we know against David Morrell. So who's going to win here? I think it's going to be a very good fight. I think they'll both be steady in their pace, and there'll be good exchanges, not non-stop punching, because I think they'll both be aware of the gas tank and not emptying it too quickly. But in the end, I just think, you know, David Morrell is a very live dog in this fight, but I just think David Benavidez has got a bit more sauce on him. They reach a disadvantage over, even though Morrell is a shorter fighter, might be a factor. And, you know, David Morrell, I've noticed he gets hit with the straight rights against Kalajic, the classic reply to a southpaw. And David Morrell, when he holds his gloves here, he picks up his elbows like that, and there's gaps down here, and I'm sure David Benavidez is going to exploit that to the body. And I'm not quite sure if David Morrell is as yet as good a technician as Alexander Gvozdyk. I might be wrong, but I'm thinking here it's going to be a steady fight of some good exchanges. I think David Benavidez is going to bank those shots in the body, and I think it's going to be interesting to see who holds their stamina in the later rounds, or if it just slows down generally. But in the end, you know, when judges score a fight, a guy can have a lot of volume and a lot of jabs, but another guy lands two combinations in the round and it snaps back the other guy's head and gets the crowd excited, and then they just edge the rounds. So I think it's going to be a highly competitive affair. I think it's going to be a very good fight. And I'm thinking here David Benavidez is going to win a close one. I'm thinking David Benavidez is going to edge the rounds, the exchanges, by just being the harder hitter. I don't know if David Morrell can take what David Benavidez dishes out, but Benavidez couldn't get rid of Gvozdyk, you know. And remember, Beterbiev got Gvozdyk out of there, but there's only one after Beterbiev in the division. So I'm thinking David Morrell is going to be able to take what David Benavidez dishes out, unless Benavidez gets him early. I don't think Benavidez is going to sustain the pace to grind Morrell out of there. So I'm thinking David Benavidez by a close decision, perhaps a split decision, David Benavidez. I think the harder shots is going to carry the day. That's going to be from Benavidez. And I definitely think David Morrell is going to win some rounds. But yeah, Mexico versus Cuba, I'm going for Mexico in this. You guys got to tell me, of course, who do you think wins, and who and why do you think they win, and how do they win? So that is it from me, guys. Please remember to share the content among your boxing connections. Tell me if you think that the winner of this fight will make a good opponent for either Dmitry Bivol or Artur Beterbiev, whoever wins that rematch. And until I see you guys again, thank you to everybody who subscribed. Please consider subscribing if you haven't. And remember to keep those hands up.